As a research scientist who speaks frequently on chronic disease prevention, I find that I'm often asked two questions by many in the audience, especially with respect to conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and certain cancers. And these questions, which predictably reoccur, are as follows. 1. In your opinion, does food have anything to do with why so many people get heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, fill in the blank disease? And 2, does food have anything to do with how we might proactively prevent these diseases? Now, it seems ironic to me that even in these times in which epidemiological research has unequivocally established the link between diet and health, there are millions of people out there who are wondering if this connection is truly real. They are still tenuous about it. Due to the fact that this topic is very broad, I'm going to restrict this discussion to just a few salient and simple truths. Let us momentarily consider some facts. It is no secret that today the Western world is mired in an epidemic of chronic diseases. Interestingly enough, this was not always the case. A careful study of disease progression rates in the United States and the West indicates that chronic disease rates skyrocketed in the US and the West in close correspondence to the transition from largely agrarian to largely industrialized methods of food production. The mass inundation of the supermarket shelves with processed and packaged foods, especially post-World War II, caused a phenomenal change in people's eating habits, and with that, a phenomenal change in the state of their lives and health as well. Whereas at one time, food was produced by one's own physical labor and was largely a matter first of sustenance and then of pleasure, this principle became completely reversed with the advent of commercialized and industrialized foods. Now, it became all about pleasure first and then sustenance, if at all. Refined, overprocessed, oversalted, oversweetened, trans fat-laden foods came to rule the supermarket shelves, and with that, our taste buds as well, very soon. This has now gone on for several decades up until our present time. And now, to all this, we have added, albeit unwillingly, even more health-destroying variables. Ask most anyone, and they will tell you, stress and fatigue seem to rule the day. A daily 8-hour shift by the computer occurs with alarming regularity, whereas daily exercise is irregular at best. Sleep is elusive and averages less than 6 hours for most. The sit-down farm-fresh meal for the lunch or dinner hour is a distant pipe dream of the past, whereas the techno-protein bar on the go is the dominant reality of the lunch hour. A home-cooked dinner is a rare treat, hardly the daily norm. Thus far, we have talked about the West in general, or nations generally perceived as Western. Now let's talk briefly about countries that have relatively recently undergone Westernization. Two salient examples in this category are China and India, and each of these countries have recently witnessed skyrocketing rates of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Interestingly enough, these countries have seen skyrocketing rates of disease in exact correspondence with their abandonment of traditional whole foods and their mass adoption of Western-style foods. For example, it is no longer trendy in India to be served a meal of lentils with brown rice and a side of locally produced fresh vegetables and a side of yogurt, for example, the way it has been done for centuries. Instead, it is infinitely more exciting today in India to order Western-style foods for lunch or dinner, such as hot dogs, burgers, pizza, and the like. How do I know? I have been there. These are the new items over there, the new foods, the new items of excitement. But the excitement will not last, neither should it. The World Health Organization recently estimated that this year, in 2010, 60% of the world's cardiac patients will be from the Indian subcontinent alone, giving India the dubious distinction of being the country with the highest rate of heart disease in the world. It is said that those who refuse to learn the bitter lessons of history are doomed to endure repeating them. And the lessons of history in this case are simply these. Locally produced traditional whole foods sustain and nourish people and have done so for centuries. In addition, sustainable agriculture preserves the health of the soil, which in turn literally provides health and vitality to the people. But wherever and whenever people have turned their backs on the soil and chased after the latest and greatest techno food or fad of the day, they have chased after a dangerous illusion, one that has cost them not only their vitality, but oftentimes tragically, their very lives. And these are the facts. The numbers prove it. It is not anyone's opinion, mine, or someone else's. The numbers establish the truth. So does food have anything to do with why we are sick or how we might get well? Well, the numbers tell us that the West is sick and the newly westernizing are getting sicker. The food experiments of the United States, Europe, Australia, China, and India all testify that those who have no clue where their breakfast, lunch, or dinner come from are the sickest of all. So let's sum this up. For those who are still haunted by whether food really matters, here are the official answers to the two questions I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. Yes, modern, denatured, processed, packaged, commercialized food has a lot to do with why we are so sick in the Western and the newly westernizing nations. And yes, traditional, locally produced whole foods have a lot to do with how we might regain our health. While food is not the only factor in the genesis of disease, and certainly genetics or the environmental factors may play a role, nonetheless, the weight of both epidemiological and time-tested evidence bears out that what we eat and how we produce what we eat are fundamental to our well-being and to our very existence. You see, in any land where nearly every meal is processed, preserved, prepackaged, frozen, or microwavable, where a myriad of foods are especially produced with the objective of being eaten on the go, and where the average adult has neither seen nor can even recognize a kernel of real wheat, rye, or barley, health seldom reigns.